Welcome to Dad Hammer, Bolters, and Booze, where we discuss all things Warhammer while staying hydrated with an adult beverage. I am David the Warboss, and I am joined by Chaplain Lee.
What's up? It's good to be back. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. How long can you say Happy New Year until it's the new year? How long can you say that?
I mean,
till the second quarter.
Second quarter. Is that like having you buy a new car and then you tell somebody hey, we can't take my car because it's still new, like a year into it. It's still a new car. Can't take it.
After we get 1,000 miles on the clock, then it's a brand new, the year's up or something like that.
Okay. I like the logic. I'm not sure I follow it, but I like it anyway. And also joined by the most generic Space Marine in the Imperium, Medicae Steve. Steve, how we doing?
We're good, man. We're gonna knock the New Year smell off this interior. About it.
What is that? What does the New Year smell like? Plastic?
Fresh pine trees. I don't know. I don't really know. We had the car analogy, so I had to keep going.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't smell like a taxi cab, we're okay.
Oh gosh.
Actually, when I've been in Uber, and they usually smell pretty good. Like they've always got the air fresheners, and if you get a nice one, they got the bottle of water. There, I never take those.
Right. No, I could be roofied, man. You don't know. I mean, at least a taxi, it's cigarettes and broken dreams. So you know what you're getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what that would smell like either, but that's all. That's in the past. We're all about the new 2024 smell now.
Yes, it's an even number. I like it. I like even numbers.
Well, we have a fantastic show to kick off the new year. To start with that new year smell, we're going to talk about Warhammer the Old World, and we've got some impressions about the new models, box sets that come out. Or at least they've been shown off. Those are going to be coming out soon. We'll be looking at those and also just asking the question about what the implications are for the old world. And they also showed off a Battle from a Crag box set, a very retro feel going into the end of 2023. And just wanted to talk through some of the implications and whether or not that's going to divide the fan base and things like that. We'll also discuss the new Dark Angels Christmas surprise box that was shown off and's got Medicae Steve all excited. And then finally, we've got new combat patrols coming in soon with the new issue of White Dwarf, which we're all very, very excited about. Lots to talk about. Thank you so much for listening to our show. As always, if you like what you're hearing, make sure to rate, follow, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. You can also find us on our website, dadhammerpodcast.com, and all over social media. And also check us out on YouTube. We've really started to put the hammer down and release a ton of video content on YouTube. We've got some reviews, some impressions. We've got 2 or 3 more coming in, painting guides, and a lot of cool stuff coming up. So make sure to check that out and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. But first, we're going to start with the most important part of every Dad Hammer podcast, and that is, what are we drinking? Chaplain Lee, I'm going to go with you first. Hit us with a 2024 special. What you drinking?
So I am drinking a fizzy beverage, a soda. It's actually Coca-Cola. But the twist is my 11-year-old forgot to tighten the cap on properly, so it's flat with no bubbles. So tonight it's
dark sugar water.
We're really living on the edge.
Yeah. Now it's Coca-Cola Classic, not New Coke. Did you ever have New Coke when that came out?
I mean, you got to think. I remember Tab Clear. That's how far. Did you guys have that here?
Oh man, did we?
Clear Coke.
I never. Well, okay, yeah, we had clear Pepsi, but
there was Tab Clear.
I didn't have Tab. I've never had Tab.
It was Tab Clear. So, yeah, that was one of the beverages.
That sounds terrible.
This is a true story. So I was in Indonesia and I was walking through the grocery store, like looking for something to drink. And there was an energy drink there for sale called Pocari Sweat. I mean,
delicious.
Yeah, I mean, a cool, cold glass of sweat. Yeah. So we won't be drinking that, but tonight is
Flat Coke.
Yeah, with ice.
Well, yeah. We gotta elevate it
Just
a little more.
Yeah.
Well, you enjoy that, Steve. You've got the Warhammer cocktail. I am drinking a beer this evening, and it's called Moon Man. And it is it says here, I'm not really sure I understand. It's an IPA, but it says a no coast pale ale. I don't know what that means. I think that's a made up thing, but
No coast.
no coast. It's from
Huh.
Wisconsin, so I guess that makes sense. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, it tastes good. The thing is, I had it in my beer fridge. Because I have a dedicated beer fridge like you do. So I had it in my beer fridge and it was in the very back and it was extra cold. And I was worried that when I opened it up, it was going to spew everywhere. But so I was very careful, opened it very slowly, and we're all good. We came away unscathed. I could tell you were worried, Steve. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm okay.
Well, I've been there, so it's no fun.
Literally, you've been here and opened one that was too cold and spewed everywhere. That's okay. We'll forget that. Yeah. All right, man. Well, what you got? You got the Warhammer themed cocktail today. So what you got?
So it's called the Sneaky Pete. We're gonna rename it the Infiltrator because it's Warhammer and they're infiltrators and they're fun and sneaky. So this is a sneaky rendition of basically a White Russian. However, so it's 1 ounce of rye whiskey, an ounce of coffee liqueur, an ounce of milk or cream or mixture of both, ice, and stirred up and on the rocks. And I like it better than a White Russian. I think.
Okay.
It's really, really tasty. It's like chocolate milk, but boozy.
I've got speaking of boozy, I've got another beer in my fridge that was given to me by a friend over the Christmas break, and it's 11%. So
Sneaky Pete. Indeed.
Yeah, a little bit. And it had a guy on the front. I can't remember what it's called, but he looked like a Sneaky Pete, so it made me think of that. Yeah, but the Sneaky Pete cocktail, the Infiltrator. Sorry, we got to say it the right way.
Yeah, that's right.
It sounds pretty good.
It is good.
Could you eat it with maybe some cookies or something? It sounds like
yes,
it's like a dessert.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
you can almost pour this on ice cream. I think it'd be all right.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah, very, very good. You enjoy your cocktail. Lee, you have fun with your flat Coke on the rocks, and I will enjoy my Moon Man beer. Cheers and bottoms up, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
All right, let's get into some news. And we have recently released, they've done a little bit of a media blitz, I would say, on Warhammer the Old World. If you're unfamiliar with this, the Old World, Warhammer the Old World is really kind of a recreation. It's not a re-release. I wouldn't go that far. It's more of a recreation of Warhammer Fantasy for those that have been into the game for a very long time. That's actually my first introduction to Warhammer was Warhammer Fantasy, playing some ogres and at the Games Workshop store in a local mall of all places. It did a demo back in the day. And for a lot of people, that was their introduction to Warhammer, is Warhammer Fantasy. So the Old World is really an attempt to get that nostalgia back for a lot of people. And they have shown off some pretty impressive models. They've done a really good job, in my opinion, with what they have shown so far. The Bretonians and then the Tomb Kings, which are the classic. Everybody remembers the Tomb Kings, the skeletal Egyptian guys. Very cool. I did want to just get the impressions, the first take from you two. What do you think of the Tomb Kings? Lee, I wanted to start with you because I know that's where you initially began with. You've told on this podcast about having some skeletons and running those back in the day. What were your impressions of the Tomb Kings and the models they've shown off so far?
I mean, I think it's great. Like for me, as soon as I saw it, I had all that nostalgia feels. I even went back today and found like where I started Warhammer and the first rule book, that I had, which was the third edition fantasy battle rules, where there's a picture of like a barbarian using like a mace to smash goblins in the face, but they're smiling like like it's fun. And there's so I mean, I was playing this game when like Dungeons and Dragons was first out as the cartoon, and Gauntlet was a game on the Amstrad
Oh
computer.
yeah, nice.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so like for me, as soon as I saw the Tomb Kings, like I went back to all of that, and I was like, oh man, yeah, there was a Dungeons and Dragons show, and oh, that's the book, and obviously the models are newer and improved, and the sculpts are better, but it still has that all the nostalgia, and then the square bases. The only thing that I'll probably miss is them coming out as lead models that you had to purchase, and they came in these like little blister packs, and then
Yeah.
in order to stand them up, you didn't glue the feet. You kind of had this lead rectangle on the bottom that you pushed into the square base. But as soon as I saw those, I went back to all those old shows, and I remember my dad taking me to the model store to purchase my own like little lead models. And then in England at the time, I didn't know what to use, so I was using like Humbrol enamel paints to paint the lead miniatures that I had, and I had no idea about wearing masks to stop the fumes from, you know. So there's me as a young kid, like whoa, this is
So
amazing.
dizzy.
But it was just like a blast from the past, and I think that's what they're going for with this. So, I have a backlog of minis to paint and armies to build, or as we call it, pile of potential.
hmm
But this is a little bit tempting just from the nostalgia point of view.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't have the nostalgia per se. I mean, I played a demo game at a Games Workshop store, and I played Warhammer Fantasy with the green hills and the grass and all of that. And I had I don't remember if I actually played ogres. I just remember liking ogres and wanting to play those. And I got all excited, and then I looked at the prices. And I think at the time I was like a help desk, you know, and not making a lot of money, and so the prices was just like, "Oh, there's no way I'm gonna do this. This game is not that fun." And to be fair, though, I had a really bad teacher at the time. I remember going in and doing the demo, and the guy was basically just saying, "Roll these dice," and I would ask why, and he like, "Just roll it." So there would be,
Was this
yeah,
was
it
this the
did.
Ushopti guy?
Yeah, there's the Ushopti guy. Yeah, I've told this story before where, and every time I would say, okay, I'm gonna move up, and he kept saying the word Ushopti over and over again. And I remember that word, and that we just kind of made fun of it for the rest of the time. And like, well, we're not, this game's too expensive, and it wasn't that fun. So that was my introduction to Warhammer, and I never picked it up until I think eighth edition Warhammer 40K, and then started playing Age of Sigmar as well. But I don't have the same nostalgia feel, but I gotta admire that the models themselves. They look really good, and I love skeletons. That's just cool. Just skeleton anything is going to be cool. Um, so, Steve, I know that you
Mhm.
had your eye on, you were looking at both of them. We were talking about it earlier, but the Bretonians, when I first saw those, and I heard that they were going to be one of the initial sets, I immediately kind of rolled my eyes like, oh man, Bretonians, that sounds so lame. And I've seen some pictures of them. And then when the actual model sets came out, like, oh snap, like these look really, really good. So what were your thoughts on the Bretonians?
So I didn't even know this whole old world was a thing. So I'm even like further in the dark, right? I didn't know until this year when they started talking about it. I have always assumed the fantasy stuff was always Sigmar stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite realize all that there was a precursor to this. I like the Bretonians because it gives that plausible historical feel to them. You know, I don't know, the whole King Arthur and his knights and the banners with all the colors, and you could paint each dude individually, whatever. I thought that was kind of cool because I really thought about historical war games. Like I think there's like Bolt Action, and I know
Mm-hmm.
there's a bunch that you recreate actual battles through history and stuff. So I think those are kind of cool. I've never played any, but this kind of gave that feel, you know. Um, I don't know. The Tomb Kings are great because I think about the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies that came out in like the
Yeah.
90s, and it has very much that feel. Almost like, CGI was just good enough to be on the big screen,
Right.
but it was really kind of bad compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
And these models kind of give that feel. They're not, I don't want to call them bad models. They're really great models, but it's like 90s CGI
Yeah.
versus I don't know how to explain that, but it has a great nostalgic feel for me because the movie stuff that I can relate to and everything else. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like that Egyptian. I'm a Necron guy too, so it fits too.
I agree, and I'm looking at some of the models now, like the Pegasus Knights and the Grail Knights Command, the Battle Pilgrims. I mean, just looking at them, the sculpts themselves and the faces look very
Mm-hmm.
old school, very very 90s esque. I remember playing back in the day. This was like little kid Warhammer. I had a game called Battle Masters, which was from the makers of Hero Quest. And for those that remember the wonderful game Hero Quest, if you haven't checked out the YouTube video, it's the Hero Quest is the best game ever made. You gotta check that out. But I mean, Battle Masters was like it looked like Warhammer, but it was just a much cheaper version, and the game wasn't really that fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but these sculpts kind of give me that vibe, so that's the only really nostalgia I can pull from on that. The one exception though, for the Bretonians that didn't necessarily get it looked like it got a more modern update, which is the Battle Standard Bearer on Royal Pegasus, the one where it's got the wings spread wide open. That one looks like a more modern Warhammer sculpt versus the
Mm-hmm.
rest of them. You could tell they just took the old ones and maybe reskinned them a little bit, made them a little nicer, but they still look very old. And that's a compliment. I don't mean that in a bad way, right? Um, so I like the presentation. The colors very vibrant, which I
Mm-hmm.
think too is something we got so used to the grim dark with 40K, and even Age of Sigmar has some of that, more of a modern look. And I like the colors. I like the banners and the
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like that feel of a Renaissance festival. That's kind of what it looks like.
That's a good way to look at it. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. So I thought that they were really cool. The square bases and all of that has a nostalgic feel to it. But the full preview with all the cards and the dice and the trays and everything, I thought they did a really good job of outlining what's coming out. So should be a lot of people getting excited for it. So that, really cool new stuff coming out. Excited about that. They also released, and I just wanted to hit on this quickly, the Battle for Macragge. It was a retro set which had some Space Marines and Tyranids in it, and they kept the old school feel. And I know we had talked about that. It's not something that any of us are super excited about, other than the terrain looks pretty cool. But one of the things I wanted to talk about here and get you guys' take is with the old world and then the Battle for Macragge both being more of a retro set. They were leaning pretty hard into that seemingly going into the end of the year. So I just wanted to pose the question because there's so many games out. There's just tons and tons of options when you walk into a Warhammer store. All these different ways to get into the hobby. And now they're coming out with this legacy retro stuff. My question, Lee, I'll start with you. Questions to you for, as I guess the newer player amongst us. You've been playing it for well, you started back in Warhammer Fantasy, but then with the modern iteration for a couple of years. Is this something that if you're walking into a Warhammer store for the first time, now if you've never played Warhammer before, are you trying to figure out which way to go? Is this going to like split split the fan base? Maybe is a better way to ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's gonna like split the fan base, because I think this is gonna hit those people that maybe like us have played it, as kids, and it's again that nostalgia feeling. As I've looked through, because I just had a quick scan through like the rules side of it, and it looks pretty. For me, at first, I was going through it, and I was like, man, I don't understand this, because there's
Yeah,
keeping everything in, coherency, and
for the
everything's in
formations.
formations, and that, and I think that's the stumbling, maybe the hurdle that people are going to have to get over. Whereas with, you have that in 40k, but you've got that easy entry point, which is combat patrol. Now, I haven't played a Sigmar game yet. I'm looking forward to playing that. I've just got to get my Seraphon painted up. So I don't have the ability to be able to compare those all. So really, I just think it's going to be people's choice. And I wonder if 40k will still have the draw purely because of the exposure it gets in the store. It feels like when you go in the store, there's more 40k terrain set up than there is Sigma, terrain. And I would imagine, Old World would fall. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a Blood Bowl type thing where it's, hey, this is a thing. I think it's going to be one of those major players, but I
Yeah,
wonder if it's going to be picked up with some of the more older players within
yeah.
the
We,
game.
we like to we like to call the older players, such as ourselves, seasoned
Oh,
veterans, maybe.
that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you only got so much table space, right? You can only put so much down on in a store, and you've got the tables at the one here in Nashville. When we go to there, you've got, I think he's got 4 tables out, so you can only put so much out there. And 40k definitely dominates, but when you think about the terrain doesn't really play as big of an impact in Age of Sigmar as it does in 40k, because you're not shooting as much in Age of Sigmar. It's mostly melee. So you think, well, other than terrain looking really awesome, and we've talked about how much I love terrain on this show before, I always like more terrain, even if it really serves no purpose. Even if there's a giant castle or a cave or a mountain or something in the background, I definitely want that on the table, just because it immerses me more into the game versus just having a flat space. And I remember back in the day playing Warhammer Fantasy for that one time, they just had a couple of hills, and it wasn't a lot, maybe some trees off to the side, but terrain wasn't involved much. And so to kind of going back to what you just said is, are you going to walk into a Warhammer store and see a ton of Old World? Maybe not, but I don't think they're going to have a dedicated table to it necessarily, because it's not going to be visually impressive. It's not going to have a ton of big buildings and ruined structures and things, because I don't think, and I'm jumping ahead, but I don't think that the Old World is going to have a lot of terrain to show off. And for me, if I'm managing a Warhammer store, for example, I want people to walk in and be immediately blown away, but like, oh wow, this is visually impressive, and the Old World is cool, the models are cool, but it's not going to have that height, that 40k does with the buildings. So, will it spread the fan base? I don't know. I'm thinking it might, but I think it's going to be more of the older crowd, the seasoned crowd, as you said.
Yeah, I also wonder, like, because what we've seen with 10th edition, that it came out, everyone was ready to go, and then there've been rule changes and, nerfs here and there. So it feels like we're still trying to work out what 10th edition is doing in certain aspects and balancing and all those things. I wonder if Old World is going to experience that. So learning the new rule set, at least with 10th edition, we had a base knowledge of how to play the game. Because this feels like a brand new system, I wonder with the brand new rules, and then obviously it looks like they've got 2 armies right now that are set ready to go. So
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine the balancing isn't as bad, but I wonder if the changing in rules and the balancing and all those things may be another one of those hurdles to get over. It looks amazing, it looks cool, but again, we've not seen how it plays out as a game mechanic, and as they begin to add those other factions, is that going to mess things up? So I'm all about have what you get what you've got, and then hone it and perfect it, and then release something else. And it feels like we're still trying to hone and release 10th edition, and now we've got a brand new game, and it's like, oh man. So I wonder if you're going to see those issues across the board. But I don't work for Games Workshop, Warhammer, whatever the official name is now. I don't I don't work for those, and I'm sure they've got a plan. But that's just as a outsider looking in. I'm
Well,
asking those questions.
I wonder too. You mentioned the game balance, and that more leads to the competitive side. I wonder if that's going to matter as much, because a lot of times when you release a nostalgia retro product, and I'm not talking about just Warhammer, really anything has nostalgia attached to it. You're already it's already upgraded on a score for the fans because they're so excited. It's kind of like when the new Star Wars movies came out. It could have been literally the worst movies ever, and some would say that they weren't great. But I mean, when Force Awakens came out, everyone was so excited just to have more Star Wars. Right? I mean, I'm not a massive Star Wars fan, but I like it just as much as an average person, and I was excited. We saw it opening night, and I thought it was fine. It didn't blow my mind, but it was fine. I watched it multiple times, since then, and I thought, yeah, I mean, it wasn't amazing, but the nostalgia was there, and it was just cool to see all of the Star Wars stuff again. And so I wonder with the old world, my point being, I wonder if the old world will get a free pass on some of the balance issues, because people that were huge Warhammer Fantasy fans, and I've read that the model scale, the miniature scale, is going to stay the same. So they want people to play their old armies that they've had in grandma's attic for forever, and pull those back out and play the game. I wonder that if people are going to be so excited for that they're going to ignore major holes in the rules or balance issues, at least for you have a grace period, for a short amount of time. Steve, I know that you're not a super excited about Old World. I guess since you only heard about it this year, but having played other games that I know that you love, do you think that the balance issues are really going to be a problem up front? I mean, of course, the internet's going to internet, and they're going to complain,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Do you think this is going to be an issue that they're going to have to resolve quickly?
No, I think this is an answer to a question that a lot of people have been asking for a lot of years. So I think there's a fan base that's already built in for it, that have just wanted to see it come back. I think this is going to be very similar to the Horus Heresy stuff, the 30K game, in that it does not really follow a whole lot of what we know as 40K, or Sigmar or anything like that. It might, I don't know. I think it follows maybe something like second edition rules,
Mm-hmm.
sort of. Um, but that's a very niche market too. Only certain people, a lot of people just buy the miniatures because they can use them in 40K. But I think the rule set and the gameplay there's been a lot of people all along playing 30K style games for whatever rule set they've had. And to my knowledge, I don't think there's been a lot of balance updates or anything like that. So I feel like this is going to be something similar along those lines. It won't make a big splash if there are, like every balance data slate and every FAQ that comes out for 40K, it is, either doom and gloom or yeehaw. You know what I mean? It's very polarizing one way or the other. And I just don't think this is going to be the biggest splash. I think for me personally, because I don't have a lot of investment in this, right? I like to look at it. It's cool. I'll never get into it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's almost a guarantee.
Yeah.
But, as much as people want to rag on Games Workshop Warhammer about being this big corporate conglomerate, and there's like the boogeyman of wargaming, they're really a small company in the larger scheme of things. And I feel like they have a lot of uh, things that are really difficult to get out now. there are things in just 40K alone that people want to buy and would buy it right off the shelf. But because they have to spread their facilities and their resources to create certain miniatures, they can't do it all, right? So for me, I worry that for instance, like if you were a Necron player, the codex came out, the meta's hot, and now you can't buy a set of wraiths anywhere. They're not on the web store. They're nowhere, and if you find them on eBay, they're twice as what they should be retail. And a lot of stuff is like that. My problem with it is I hate to see them do this big launch on something that's so niche, but it's also alienating their customers who have been around for a long time because they can't get the models that they want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in all fairness, they obviously surely do some marketing and understand this better than I do. So they must be willing to take the gamble. You just don't. I think you don't want to see them water their own company down. That's what I fear. I don't want them to become the Walmart or the Amazon of the wargaming industry. I don't want it to cheapen up because, like, well, we can't get these models out. Everybody wants them, so let's start making cheaper models, or let's start figuring out how to mass produce them on a level that's because the quality is high. I don't care. I mean, you can talk about availability, price, whatever. I really think the quality is high and it gets better and better. So the more games that come out, my point being is you're going to spread your rule makers out. You're going to spread your sculptors out. I mean, everything gets a little watered down because they're not a huge company. They're not a Toyota or they're not a General Motors. They're a small market company still.
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
that's my only concern about it. I love that they have the variety though. I think that's wonderful. And at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I have some wraiths for sale if you want. They're $300.
That's a steal. I mean,
you could sell them for
right.
But I'll knock 20% off if you buy them now.
Yeah, right now. Actually, if you use discount code DadHammer24, you'll get 24.3% off. That's all I could come up with.
Very precise.
Yeah, very precise discount. Yeah, I agree. I am worried that they're trying to do too much, and sometimes that means they're going to get rid of another product. Right? If they come out with the old world and that takes off, it's been received really well. I think people are excited about it. So does that mean they're going to drop off a game? They're going to get rid of a game? I don't know. I don't know what's performing well, what's not. I mean, I look at stuff like Necromunda, for example, or Blood Bowl. I don't know how popular those games are. I don't hear anybody talking about it or playing it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad games or that I'm not interested in them. I think Necromunda looks really cool. I think Blood Bowl looks really cool, and I'm a big sports fan, so it would make sense. But end of the day, I can only build so many models and paint so many things and play so many games. Like I can't keep track of all the rules. So I am concerned unless they are maybe they're hedging their bets on, the Henry Cavill Warhammer TV show that's going to introduce this whole new audience to Warhammer. And now you got all these new people coming in and not everybody wants to play Space Marines potentially. And they're more attracted to the old. I don't know, but there's a lot of options, I think, at this point for them.
I just thought of something. How nuclear would the internet go if the Henry Cavill Amazon first series is Old World?
Oh, I don't think.
You shouldn't speak that into existence.
I don't think it just rolls out like with Brendan Fraser as well, and they do a big. Just kidding. It's Tomb Kings. I mean,
suckers.
I don't think Henry Cavill wouldn't let that happen.
No, I'm just joking.
Because really he's a giant Space Marine fan. I couldn't see him doing it, but man, that would light Reddit on fire.
Oh, please do it on April 1st, just as a joke. Amazon, if you're listening, I got your April 1st joke.
It's a free. Use DadHammer code DadHammer1.
24.
Yeah, 24.3. Yeah. So I think that with the old world, there's some concerns with splitting the company a little bit and splitting up their resources and how quickly, and is the quality going to fade? I think that's a viable, argument to be had. I wonder too if it's going to split the fan base, but then at the same time, you think of something like World of Warcraft, where it has you got your retail for those that play World of Warcraft. You've got a retail version and then a classic version. They've come out with classic because I started playing World of Warcraft not as early on as everybody else, but um, there's two different versions, and I've gone back to play the classic version, warts and all, and some of the things I'm just like, oh boy, the retail version is just that the modern day version is so much better gameplay experience wise. But there's just something about the classic stuff, like this part was just so cool. I like this better, so I'm willing to forgive some of the game mechanics. And maybe that they're hoping for that, or something like Dungeons and Dragons, where you can adapt and play these older versions, and people are still playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons, even though they've got all the new hotness out. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing that they're going to do as well. But I think at this point, time will tell. If nothing else, I think Warhammer Games Workshop is in a good place. Their stock's really doing well. Last I heard, and the products are selling well. They're coming out with new stuff. They got Henry Cavill's show. Hopefully that doesn't tank. All things are pointing up, I think, for Games Workshop / Warhammer, or whatever they're called now. I don't even know anymore. But I think exciting times. I am looking forward to the old world. One of the things I did want to mention for anyone listening to this and who's interested in, and especially if you're a new player, I'm going to be putting up a video on our YouTube channel about getting into old world and whether or not that's for you. If it's something you want to take on as your very first Warhammer game, I got a few thoughts on that. So be on the lookout in the next week or so for a new video hitting our YouTube channel about that. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Old World, it definitely has really cool miniatures. I am excited just to see it. I probably won't be getting it personally because I'm playing so many other games, but it's going to be cool no matter what. All right, so let's move on then more to modern times. Even that's kind of a weird thing to say. Old World is not yet coming out, so we're going to move to a futuristic stuff.
Back to the future, baby.
Yeah, pretty much. So they unleashed a little bit of a Christmas surprise on us. And Steve, I was texting you when that first came out, a new Dark Angels box set. And as the resident Dark Angels fanboy, how are you feeling about this? Are you excited? Are you not?
Well, I'm gonna totally call in the Inquisition here. I'm not horribly pumped by this.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know, man. Look, I love Terminators and I love Deathwing stuff. Whole reason I really got into lean hard into Space Marines was because of Terminators. And the Belial model, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait. Probably will pick that up. But man, I have enough Terminators. I don't need 20 more. And I just
sure you do.
Yeah, okay, all right, yeah, you really do.
There we go.
If the price is right, rumored as such around $200, I need it even less. Because here's the thing, the Terminators are out for Deathwing stuff right now are still viable. So these are literally like buying a skin on a video game. They're nice. They're wonderful. They're really cool.
I'm gonna say my son does that all the time, and he's wasted I don't know how much money buying skins in Fortnite. So there's an audience for this.
There's absolutely no upswing on this. There's no new rules. I'm like, it's not this new Terminator that's so much more special than the old Terminator, right? So I feel like I'm just reskinning the models that I've already spent a lot of time building. So for me, that's just a no-go. It's not my way of playing either. I don't like to play big bricks of one of anything. Mm-hmm. I get really 30 legionaries. I get really sick and tired of painting the same thing after a while, right? I really wanted the Raven Wing. I think the Raven Wing needed a much more crucial and acute update than the Terminators did, because their models, if you play that model in any other Space Marine uh, team or unit, those models themselves are actually relegated to legends now. The old Space Marine bikers, the old attack bikes, they're not actually the new hotties. They're relegated to legends rules and are actually, if I understand right, not tournament friendly.
Right.
So, but those models are still in the Raven Wing and the Dark Angels Codex, but they're played as Black Knights and Command Squad, and etc. So they're a little bit different. But now you have Outriders, the Space Marine bikes that have taken over that spot, and they are different. The rules for Outriders and the stats for Outriders are way different than um, any of the other bike stuff. So my point being is like, because they lean heavy into that, and with the lion coming back, and this whole rumor of the risen, all the fallen, all the firstborn, Dark Angels coming back, and everything else. They had at one time in the lore, and this might be old, but they had the, hang on fellas, the hexagrammaton. So the Dark Angels had 6 wings, right? They had Deathwing, Ravenwing, Dreadwing, Firewing, Ironwing, and Stormwing. So we know what the Deathwing are. We know
Chicken
what the
wing,
Ravenwing are.
little wing.
Chicken wing.
Sorry.
Exactly.
That's the dad joke. You're welcome.
The bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
But they had other guys that were like, one was specialized in boarding actions, another one was armor and heavy artillery, that kind of stuff. And I was really kind of hoping they would bring that back. Of course, now you have stuff like White Scars and Iron Hands, and you have other other chapters and stuff that are sort of taking on those roles. I guess adding it into one chapter would be kind of silly. It's old lore, but still pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would have liked to have seen other stuff, but that's not to say that it won't. But man, I don't know. If you're going to bring in the new codex and you're going to do all that, I was like, it's just I can't buy 20 Terminators.
Yeah, it's a lot of Terminators, and I mean, and you just made a mention about the Chaos Space Marine Legionaries, and yes, I just finished finally the last of the 30 Legionaries that I had, and my goodness, I never want to paint another Legionary. It's just 30 of anything, and this is coming from somebody. I have 90 Orc boys, and I managed to do that, but they were pretty simple, and you can be pretty sloppy with those. You don't have to be crisp on the details with Orcs necessarily, but man, I just 20 of anything gets old to me. And so just looking at a box set, even if it's a great value and you love Terminators, you still got to paint all those guys. And, for someone like myself who doesn't just love painting, I'll do it because I know that they look good eventually when you get them on the table. This is just more of the same. It would have been cool if they would have added a few extra characters. But, Lee, what were your thoughts on this box in general? I know you had your eye set on the little munchkins that that came with the box set more so than the Terminators.
Well, there was just little details that were just like, I was like, oh, that's cool. So I can't remember. Is it Belial? How'd you say it, Stephen?
Belial.
Belial.
I think it's
like
Belial,
if yeah. So where the vents on the Terminator pack are, if you look at that, you zoom in, it actually looks like old cathedral.
Yeah, it does.
Like stained glass window type things. So like there's all these little details, but when I was scrolling through, the ones that caught my eye were the inner circle companions. They're carrying these massive swords. I was thinking of Braveheart, where William Wallace throws the sword, like that just giant kind of broadsword type thing. But they look great. But if I'm honest, I think they look more like they should be like an elite unit for the Templar. They kind of feel like these are the guys that are just, you're going to drop these guys in and they're going to mess you up. That was my take. But I think I could be tempted to just buy those on their own and then kit bash them for something, because I think they are They look cool.
They're
They look like
smoking.
they will mess you up on the table in a fun way.
Well, I like the fact that just from a marketing standpoint, I like that they released angels on Christmas. Just for like, okay, that's kind of cool. They figure out a
Mm-hmm.
way to drip feed some of the stuff in, and they usually do that. That's when things are seem to be quieting down for the rest of the year. They've already come out with their big. It's almost like when a video game company, they all release their big games and stuff before Christmas, and then the last couple of weeks of the year are just like, okay, well, no new stuff's going to be announced until January, mid-January, sometime after they've already sold through all of their product. But Games Workshop, will occasionally do this kind of thing where it's like, hey, check this out, this is coming next year. But they have I guess the advantage on that versus a company like Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation, where they can show off something that's coming next year, knowing that you've already got players that have models or potentially getting Dark Angels for Christmas or something like that. And then, oh man, now I got something to spend Christmas money on, or gift cards, or if they got vouchers or something like that. So that they can do that. They can make those announcements to get everybody hyped for 2024. And I remember, even though I'm not a Dark Angels player and I wasn't, super excited for me personally, it got me thinking like, oh man, this is so cool. They've got new stuff coming out, and hopefully I get some cool stuff for Christmas, under the tree from Mrs. Claus. And she didn't disappoint. I got plenty of cool stuff. So, I think I like the fact that they still release this stuff. Steve, the big question I had for you for the Codex, are you going to spend the extra $40 or whatever it is for the collector's edition Codex? Just go ahead and tell me now and disappoint me.
That's a no, dog.
Yeah. Okay. Good man. Good man. Okay. All right. I keep saying, like, man, I wouldn't mind the collector's edition if they put a cool map or something in there. Give me a fancy bookmark. I don't know, anything that's more than just a changing of the binding on the outside. Just give me a break. Anyway. All right. I know I've talked about that before. So yeah, we'll
that poor dead horse.
We'll move on. All right, we'll round out the show here with an announcement that came a little under the radar after all the Old World stuff had hit, and we have a new issue of White Dwarf, issue 496, coming in very soon. Normally, we wouldn't necessarily get super duper hyped about White Dwarf, but we subscribe, and I like getting the magazine, even though I haven't read through the all of the last issue. But this one hit home a little more for us this time, because there are new combat patrol rules coming out, and they announced this on the Warcom site. Was it a couple weeks ago? Last week? Anyway, recently.
Something like that.
And they just said that there's going to be new stuff coming out for Combat Patrol, which Combat Patrol has become, a Dad Hammer favorite. This is something that we've all got busy schedules. Sometimes it's hard to get in a full 2,000 point game. And we've been able to play a lot of games recently with Combat Patrol, and sometimes get a couple of games in, which has been awesome. So the fact that they are doubling down and coming out with new rules is very exciting. Steve, I'll start with you. What are you hoping for with? They haven't really revealed too much, but what are you hoping for with what's going to be revealed in the upcoming issue of White Dwarf for Combat Patrol?
So I've been hoping for this kind of ever since Combat Patrol came out. I 100% still agree that it's the best way to get into it. I love the fact that you can buy a box and you're set. Some of us have all that stuff minus maybe one thing in those boxes. So I've always been hoping, I'm like, please make some sort of future rule set to where people who have large collections can play some variety. Because as we the other end of that, as we've played a lot of games, I've branched out to other combat patrols because I won't call it boring, but I don't want to necessarily play the exact same thing all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
But I like Combat Patrol. So I have been hoping and hoping and hoping. I was like, oh, this would be so easy to do. Because most of the Combat Patrol rule sets are what, like 4 pages, 5 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's go, GW. Let's add some flavor to it, make some different stuff. And man, they did it. And I was like, oh, this is so good for everybody.
Yeah.
Because I know they're starting with Space Marines, but this is going to extend to everyone, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
I agree. I want the flexibility would be cool to expand a little bit. The one thing is that they may get it a little far into the crusade, where you're supposed to be able to start small and build up. And Lee, I know that you have been a big proponent of narrative campaigns, which is kind of what crusade does, right? It builds in that narrative. So but because we've talked about crusade, Steve, you and I have tried to play crusade in the past, but sometimes it's just hard to get going and to keep it up. So I'm wondering, Lee, you had mentioned this previously. Would you be hopeful maybe for some kind of crusade mixture with Combat Patrol? Is that something that would interest you?
Yeah, I wonder if something like a narrative where it starts off, on a smaller scale. Like I always joked, like what would it look like for us to take the boarding actions box, that the corridor feel, and actually put that in the middle of a Combat Patrol game. So it's the same game, but you get to go towards a bunker, go into the bunker, and then suddenly you're fighting in close quarters.
Mm-hmm.
You can work your way through it, come out on the other side, and then pick up the fight. So it's almost like this idea of layering up just all the game types that we've got. That way, then also with a narrative campaign, someone can start on a Combat Patrol, but build that narrative around leveling up, almost like a I can't think of what the name is, but a league that grows with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Escalation.
escalation, yeah.
Yeah.
So start with the Combat Patrol. Well, what would it look like to escalate that? What would it look like to take it from that to a 500-point team? Okay, well, your Combat Patrol team has suddenly dropped in behind enemy lines. They've called in for reinforcements. In come the reinforcements. Build up the narrative. So almost someone is learning in that process. So as you go through as a new player, you're building up, and then you're bringing in more models and different things. What it looks like, I just had a quick look at what they're planning, but it looks like they're encouraging people to purchase the Vanguard box set
Mm-hmm.
in order to use the Solarian task force. So with that is the infiltrators, and then suppressors, and then I think you have to buy maybe the Phobos librarian, but then you can use that instead of the Octavius team for Combat Patrol. And that's really interesting, that instead of having to buy another Combat Patrol, they're pushing you to buy another box or use existing models. So I think, sorry, I've merged two things. I got really excited about that because I like the infiltrator style. I like all those models. I've got a backlog of those to paint up for the Raptors. But I'm already going, I've got that. I've got that. I just have to buy the guys that are flying with the machine guns and sneak those into the house without the good lady seeing them. But but I think for me, I think if there is a narrative with it where you can grow alongside as a player, I think that's cool. But then also, I think it's interesting that they're pushing people to buy other box sets in order to play a new style of Combat Patrol. So I think I'm really excited about it. Can you tell?
Yeah, very excited. Very excited. I wonder, because they have Crusade. Crusade was designed to start your army and then grow it based on some kind of narrative, right? That was the whole thing. So everything you just described is kind of what Crusade was built for, but it came with too much paperwork. in my opinion. We've talked about this in the past. It was just too much work to keep up with all that, to do the upgrades, the RPG type elements, to upgrade your sniper to a captain, and all that sounds really cool until you have to manage it and remember everything. And so what, you touched on something that I think would be really interesting, is if the reason combat patrol is for us anyway is so cool, is because it's simple. It's all right there. There's 4 sheets. They don't change. It's you don't have to do anything, right? You just have to bring your models, and everything is all baked in, ready to go. You don't have to worry about assembling a force or worrying about synergies and things. You just take the box and you sit down and you play, and everybody's got a relatively balanced army versus another balanced army in theory anyway. Some are a little more skewed than others, but it's an attempt to make it easy. And so I wonder then if the combat patrol style of play and the makeup of that, if they just bolted on, some kind of bonus things, if they, here's another box set, buy this. And so instead of trying to do role playing elements like Crusade, you just started with combat patrol, and then, hey, if you want to level up, if you want to do a +1 and you want to step up to combat patrol advanced or something, add this one box, and then here's a page of rules that comes along with that one box, and that's going to be called something combat patrol alpha. I don't know, they're going to come up with some fancy name for it, but that would be a way to upgrade your army without having to get into something, because really there's no leap from combat patrol to what's the next thing. You get that, and then you usually don't have enough to play a 1,000 point game unless you've got a specific type of combat patrol, and even then you don't know what to do. So I think it would be better to leave the breadcrumb trail, to get the next box, the next thing that you need to buy for your Warhammer games.
I wonder if this is the start of that, if we're going to see that with, in White Dwarf, they're saying, hey, go and buy the Vanguard Task Force, because suddenly now you've got infiltrators that can get up the field early, and then you've got these Terminators that can deep strike. I wonder if in their mind, okay, hey, this is the spin wheel effect. This is, you purchase this, and okay, this is, like David said, the next buy. So it'll be, I think what will be telling is what happens now with the other combat patrols. If this becomes a monthly thing within White Dwarf, that the next time this rolls around, hey, this is where you start with orcs. Hey, this is where you might want to go. Or we may see that the existing armies there each now have their own version of the infiltrator. So it could be, the towel box. Okay, they're going to add stealth suits in, or they're going to add, some ghost kill battle suits or something. That next level. So I think you may have stumbled upon, either their next greatest thing or something that you should actually let Games Workshop know, because I think that's pretty genius.
That's what I'm here for. These ideas aren't free though, so I'll trade you that idea for whatever your wraiths that you have, and then I'll resell them to Steve for $400. See,
that's a bargain.
Yeah, and you've already forgotten the coupon code's already expired, so you can't use that now.
Done.
Yeah, it's gone. No, Steve, it's something that we got into right towards the end was of ninth edition was boarding actions, and I'm hoping that they can tie that in as well. I would love to see, Lee touched on it. I would love to see some more terrain there, as far as combining those two.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, man, I love boarding actions,
Yeah.
and it needs a little CPR right now. It's got to be resuscitated just a little bit, because I was thinking about this the other day. I said, well, all the mechanics are still 9th edition, more or less, in boarding actions. So it would be super easy. And just to go on Lee's point, like, all right, you just need this other box. Well, how about we do combat patrol, but now we're in a corridor. So you got to leave your dreadnought out. You can't bring your jet bikes in, but here's your new unit. Here's your new, detachment or task force you can use on it. But you have 10th edition rules.
Yeah.
And you have the terrain mechanics that were so awesome with boarding actions. It's like they're ready made for one another. The points values are the same. So let's bring it back to life. just a little bit.
Yeah.
Add some more. And then hey, you'll get to sell a $200 box of terrain.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. I would like to see. I think it's a good idea. Just maybe combine, Lee, what you're talking about, combining games where in the middle of a combat patrol you go into the inside of a ship, and do some close combat type stuff and close quarters type combat, and then maybe doing some upgrades with going from combat patrol to the next box that you want to do to upgrade your army. And now, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that they could take this, and hopefully we'll get to see some good stuff when issue 496 of White Dwarf comes out. And I love the fact that they're adding more rules to combat patrol, because it's been a big hit for them, I think, and definitely something that we've leaned into. So very exciting times. Lots of good stuff coming out for the Warhammer world. That will wrap our show for this episode of Bolters and Booze. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Medicae Steve. Thank you, Chaplain Lee. I appreciate your time, your attention, and your service. I am David the Warboss, and we will see you next time on Dad Hammer. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. I got some infiltrators to paint now. Have a good one.